Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Zach.
and welcome to the Movie Vault.
Ooh, yes, it's great. We are back again. And we are here about to record a bunch of episodes once again. Ben and I, have busy lives doing back to back. So there's some great movies coming out, but we're going to go back, 6 years?
Yeah, we're going back into the archives of the Vault.
Mm-hmm. We're going to go back to when we were just mere 6-year-olds, because Ben and I are 12. That's our official age.
Yeah, we're just very mature 12-year-olds. Most people don't know that.
But we're also not. So
Yeah.
We're also immature 12-year-olds.
We also talked about vor for 5 minutes on one of our podcasts. So
Which we've already been called out upon. Anyway, so today we're going to do a movie called My Life as a Zucchini. You're probably wondering, whoa, what is that? That doesn't make any sense. But it's a 2016 film that was originally screened at the 69th Cannes Film Festival. I don't know if that's pronounced right.
I believe it's Cannes Film Festival.
I don't know. It's French, right?
Yeah, it's French. It's probably, I would think, from my perspective, from what I understand about film festivals, Cannes is like the top of film festivals. And winning the Palme d'Or or whatever it's called, that's like probably on par with winning an Oscar for Best Picture, if not higher.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was in May. Then October of that same year, it was released in all of France because it was such a great... People liked it, I guess.
Yeah.
And then later in America, where they made the English version with Nick Offerman.
With Ron Swanson, who is really the perfect guy for this movie.
Yeah,
I
very
couldn't think of it.
warm-hearted. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Anyway, it was directed by Claude Barras. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I'm really
guarantee
sorry.
that's not how you pronounce it, but I can't pronounce it better.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway. But yeah, it's a great movie. It's claymation, so it's kind of, you got to get used to it a little bit. And it's not for kids. It looks like it's for kids, but it's not. I don't think it is.
You should not show your kid this.
Yeah, probably not. But anyway, this is the synopsis. So My Life as a Zucchini is a stop-motion film about a 9-year-old boy, nicknamed Zucchini, so that's the boy, who after accidentally killing his alcoholic single mom is sent to an orphanage alongside 6 other kids with the help of a police officer named Raymond. Amongst the kids are ruthless but soft-hearted Simon and the tortured but altruistic Camille, and their shenanigans that ensue. And eventually, we'll get into the end, but that's kind of the basis of the film. Is it's set in an orphanage. It's about this one guy or this kid that accidentally killed his mom, pushed her down the stairs. He didn't mean to kill her. He even says that. And he gets to meet all these other tortured kids in an orphanage, all of which have different backstories of how they got there. And eventually, he develops this kind of father-son relationship with this police officer named Raymond, which is Nick Offerman, and he gets to exploit that relationship in a good way, where he eventually gets adopted. But it's a great story, I think. I don't think it's for everyone. It's kind of dark for the medium that it's portrayed
It's
with.
presented as a very light film, but it gets very dark as soon as Zucchini says, "I think I'm here because I killed my mom." Like he says that at one point, and you're like, oh, well, I mean, that happened, but it's still like just hearing him say the words are like, oh, it's brutal.
Yeah, there are a couple backstories where I was like, oh my goodness, like that's either terrible, disgusting, or just like, yeah, that's in real life,
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, so I think we can start out about this. It's kind of a touching film in a way because, one, it's an hour and 5 minutes. So you got to if you're going to fit something, an emotional punch in this movie, you're not going to waste any time. And I don't think they waste a lot of time in this movie. They do a lot of slow character development with Zucchini, and it feels like it's a little bit longer. Although, people could argue an hour and 5 minutes isn't enough. But for a claymation artist, whatever, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a long short film, if that makes any sense. Like it's almost a short film, but it's just a little bit longer than that. So because of that, you're okay with it. But it's interestingly paced because it doesn't always feel like, even though it's kind of compact, that they're like really trying to force a lot of things to happen at once. Like they kind of let you just go along with the characters.
And they give you time to breathe throughout the movie, which is crazy. Like usually there's like plot A, plot B, plot C, all these different things, but it really is just about Zucchini and like 2 other kids.
Right.
It's just like Zucchini, Simon, and Camille. That's really it.
Yeah.
So I think that was a plus for this movie. They didn't try to fit too much, but also like it was a film festival film, so they're gonna it's gonna be pretty focused usually.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we can start with right off the bat, Ben. You were the one who introduced this to me. I ended up liking it a lot. So what kind of got you to how did you even find this film? That's what I was wondering.
Okay, so this is way back when I first was really getting into movies, I feel like. And I don't know how I must have been I was probably looking up like best movies, highest rated movies on Netflix or whatever. And this movie got like
really going broad.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to find some good movies. And this movie, I think, got like 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I was like, ooh, My Life as a Zucchini. And then I probably saw it was like only an hour. So I was like, what the heck? I'll watch this. And then I watched it. And I think it was kind of like, it wasn't what I expected, probably. It was just, I think it hit me emotionally a lot harder the first time I watched it, which I don't know whether it was why it didn't as much this time. But it was nothing like I'd ever seen before. And it kind of, I mean, this is before I watched any like art house movies or any like of these film festival type.
That was a better version of Ben. No art house.
No art house.
I'm just joking.
No weird like.
I love this Ben.
Movies.
He's great. But no, I think the same thing for me. When I went in, I was like, this is kind of like a kid movie. You had told me it was a little sad, so I had that presupposition about it. But overall, it was like, oh, wow, this is like, it wasn't like terribly dark. We've seen darker movies than this. But it was like, for how it was portrayed, it was pretty dark. Which kind of leads me into my next question, which is like, do you think, which this is kind of like I don't know, it's a subjective question, but do you think the medium that it was portrayed as, which is claymation, in which the dark messages were portrayed, works for you?
Yeah. So I think it does. And the reason being that it really gets you in the head of the kids. Because like as a child, I don't think you have as much, you don't have as much capacity to understand why bad things happen or like how bad things happen. And you're not as like jaded as you get when you're older. I think there's a point in the movie where Zucchini is like, I like dream about a future where my mom was still alive and I'm like, she's drinking a lot and watching TV and I'm also drinking a lot. And so somehow it's like he has this foresight that like eventually over enough time of like being in this situation, he would have become like a very depressed, like jaded person, but he still has like kind of the childlike innocence. And so you can see that the kids are both like goofy. They fall into all the pitfalls that kids fall into with a little bit of bullying and a little bit of teasing and then some like little bit of like love and a little bit of jealousy and all of that. But at the same time, they just sort of like talk about these like really dark things that happen to them. And it's not, and I guess maybe they talk about them in ways that you don't expect them to. Like they just, maybe we don't give kids enough credit for their ability to understand like how bad these things are. Like we like coddle kids in our head and are like, they can't understand how the world works, but they see things and they see how, like they see how the mother drinks and they see how that's bad, and they see how some of the other parents treat the other kids, and they know that's not right, but they can't necessarily like defend against that. They feel kind of helpless. So it gets you, but they don't lose their like childlike curiosity and wonder and fun just because they had bad things happen to them either. Like, although some of the kids are like I don't forget what the girl's name is, but she has the hair that goes over her face. She was in arguably probably the worst situation of any of them, and so I think she has probably the toughest time, like socially interacting with people, and it kind of takes her longer to like open up.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think it's kind of like the way that it was portrayed, particularly with stop motion, was kind of like, it's like a kiddish world that you're seeing these horrible situations through. And maybe this is too deep, but it's a film festival, so they meant this. But it's great. I think that all the characters bring something different to the table, whether it's like different ways of coping with things. You know, you got B, who's going up trying to see if her mom's there every time someone pulls up, to the orphanage. She's like, is it mommy? Whatever. Then you got the quiet girl. I also forget her name. And she's kind of just keeping to herself. You got Simon, who's kind of taking it out on other people. You got Camille, who's she's actually very kind about it, even though she watched, her parents die right in front of her. And, you got all these different kids in different situations. And one of the kids' moms got deported or something like that. I think that was B. And then I don't remember the rest. But it's different situations of how kids are detached from their parents or don't have great relationships with their parents, or any ways that they would just end up in an orphanage in general. And you're seeing it through this kiddish, usually typically not satirical, but it's like every time you see claymation, you're gonna see like a little kid program, or
you're gonna watch like what's the guys, the big ears and the I forget what it's called.
Big ears?
There's like a specific genre of claymation. Here, I'll look it up.
Okay. But no, yeah, it's like a kid thing, right? Like,
yeah.
It's like
it goes back to like Rudolph and like
oh yeah,
that one kid's
Frosty
TV show
the
with
Snowman.
the dog.
Yeah. I don't know what that is, but you're right. It's like that type of claymation. And I think that works for this particularly because as a kid, you're going to experience things different. And like Ben said, sometimes we might not give them enough credit for what they actually understand. Like, obviously, they don't understand, just coitus. That's what we were talking about. They don't understand any of that. They don't understand sex. It's just like they were talking about just these stupid things that they thought happened, but it's not true at all based on their perception of hearing things that mean something else.
But I feel like that it's like like it's not the most comfortable, but then you're like, oh, if there was kids like in an orphanage, like they would definitely talk about this.
I mean, we did. That was probably us when we were kids. Like,
yeah,
we didn't fully understand. There's like, no way.
Nobody knew, and everyone's curious. It's like that.
Maybe
child,
fourth grade. Like fourth grade is when you find out everything. That's
right,
when it's like,
true.
whoa, what? That's what happens.
Yeah. And you still don't understand it, even when it's explained to you.
Yeah, and then somebody asks, like, explain it to me. You're like, no, I know. I don't have to explain it to you.
Yeah.
Like back to false confidence. But no, but I think there's also a downfall to that. I think some kids might watch this movie like thinking that like, oh, it's a kid's movie, and then see these kinds of things. But that's like a small downfall.
That's true. You're right. They would they would not be quite ready for what was portrayed to them, because it's not aimed at kids. It's aimed at adults to understand. Maybe adults who went through rough situations when they were kids would resonate more with this movie and relate a little bit more. But like everyone can see the sort of it's not like complicated either. It's like a very simple, like, you have this kind-hearted guy. Like, that's the redeeming quality of the movie, is that there's this guy who is kind-hearted, and then even they reveal a little bit about Raymond, that like he had a son, and his son doesn't visit him. He doesn't get to interact with him. So this is kind of like another chance for him to like play a father-like role. And it's odd because I don't think we usually think of police officers being in this like type of situation, because in the United States, I don't think police officers particularly interact with adoption. I don't know if that's like in France, that's how it works. Like
they directly are involved in taking the kid.
Right.
Well, he probably called 911, and then they probably formed a relationship, and he kept visiting him. They don't really explain that though.
No, but like we have like child protective services and like all this stuff, so it feels like the cops would almost not be involved at all.
Yeah, but I don't even know that number. CPS, like.
Yeah.
912.
I need to call Child Protective Services.
No,
I'm a little kid who something bad happened to.
Yeah. No, but and that's another part of it. But I think the adults being background characters helps, because it's like it really shows the contrast between like the light world that these kids are in, and the fun perspectives that they have on the world, like we all did, back in the day, back in 1982 when Ben and I were born. But it's a contrast to the dark themes that are in it. We keep saying that. So there's not too much to this movie, but it's like they're almost more pronounced or highlighted when something out of the blue is said that you're like, whoa, that was dark, compared to like the fun antics that they're having. There's such a contrast. I think that the director particularly did that, or the screenwriter, whatever, did that on purpose to be like, yeah, sometimes there are these great moments, sometimes there are these bad moments. And, that's not like the main point of this movie. But that's what I saw going in the second time watching this movie, just was how pointed those specific comments, those specific scenes. You'll have a fun scene where they're all dancing in a cabin, right?
Yeah, to like weird French electronic music, and it's like super random.
Yeah.
And then they like have a snowball fight.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, are they gonna all get in trouble? And it's just they just showed a snowball fight for no reason.
But they have that scene. And then the scene before that was like, oh, look, her mom's really pretty, or his mom's really pretty. I wonder if that's his mom. I don't know if that's his mom. And it shows them all staring for like a 5-second shot.
Yeah, it lingers on that shot.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so sad. Like, that's actually how kids probably are thinking about other parents, you know, that don't have parents. Like, actually, they're probably like, oh, that mom's so pretty. A little bit of jealousy, but like also happy for him, you know? It's sweet. It's sad. And it's like, the director obviously meant that. If otherwise he wouldn't have made the shot 10, 20 seconds long. I don't know how long it was. But
it felt very long. It was probably only 5 seconds, but it felt long. And then there was also contrast that to the scene right before that where was his name Ahmed?
The mom bullies him.
Yeah, she's like, "You thief. You stole that," when it was really the girl who let him borrow the glasses just to try on. And
calls him a liar when he was saying his parents are gone, you know?
Yeah. She doesn't even give him like the time of day. That she just makes assumptions about him. Yeah, his name was Ahmed. Yeah, and he's the one his dad like stole something from the police. So like the joke is he doesn't like police officers, so he keeps throwing water on Raymond.
Yeah,
and Simon doesn't particularly like police officers either. I forget kind of what Simon's story was though, as much.
But I mean, he learns to like Raymond. I mean, he takes his hat. So eventually, I don't know if he likes cops, but like
I thought that was an interesting contrast too, because at first you see Simon, and he's like all aggressive, and he like it looks like, oh, this is gonna be a whole movie of this kid making Zucchini's life miserable. But then it's like not very long until they actually kind of bond.
Yeah,
like he's like, oh, I put on this like face that I'm this like bully and I run the show. But actually, I'm just as hurt as everyone else, and I'm just trying to find out what it is. Maybe not in the best way, but I'm trying to find out like why you're here and how you relate to everyone else.
Yeah, no, that was great. I think particularly the moment where he's like, "No, you have to go, Zucchini. Nobody else gets chances like these. You know, you have to go with Raymond." And when Zucchini and Camille weren't gonna go. They were going to be there with their friends and try to make it so it wasn't like awkward or, bad for them to leave, make them sad. But Simon's like, no, you should go. And that's kind of when you're like, oh no, Simon's a really cool guy. He just is kind of a jerk to be like, stay in control. And he shouldn't be a jerk, but he's still really cool. And then at the end of the movie, when they eventually do go with Raymond, Simon's the kind of guy that was there with the kids still. And he probably knows he's not going to get adopted or something like that. And he's like, all right, last one I'm going to race someone, I have to clean my shorts or whatever, something like that. And you're like, okay, well, he's going to act happy so that these kids are happy, even though, it shows the last shot of the movie or whatever, he's actually super sad. Yeah,
he's just sitting like by the gate, and he's just, it's a really hard shot to process because you're like, oh, this kid, he's not going to get a chance. Yeah. Like, he just, like, people... Well, there doesn't look like there's that many people like there. It's not like there's people visiting all the time who are like, oh, I want to adopt these kids. Mm-hmm. So like Raymond's kind of the exception to the rule. Mm-hmm. And I guess, he can't adopt every single kid in the orphanage. Mm-hmm. That would just be another orphanage. So
that's what I was thinking. I was like, can he just adopt everyone? Then I was like, then he put those 2 people or 3 people out of jobs,
Right. But he would just be all running a unofficial orphanage. Yeah. Sort of.
It might look bad actually. Like, yeah. In his house, like a police officer with all those kids. I don't know. But the kids in particular. So when I think of another shining moment for Simon, it was him. He got like a gift in the mail or something from his mom, I think. And it was that recording device that he got. And he ends up using that, kind of giving it to Camille so that she can fight against her aunt when the judge was there. That's just kind of a great thing that nobody asked him to do something like that. He just kind of does it, and nobody asks.
Yeah, he like takes the lead on things. Yeah.
Yeah, and he also has like some sad stuff. Like he seems to be. I mean, they all are sad, to be honest. Like all of them are sad, except for like what's the blonde kid? I forget his name. He seems to be happy all the time. He doesn't seem to have.
He was the one who vomited during class and stuff, though, right? Too. It was like every class, Mr. Paul would start teaching, and then all of a sudden. What's his name?
I don't know, because he ate the toothpaste though. That was the problem.
Was it Jujube.
Yeah,
Jujube.
something
That's a
like
weird
that.
name, but it is French, so that could be a normal French name.
And then I also liked these are just facts, these aren't even related, but I also liked Zucchini's drawings, especially there are some really dumb ones, like he drew the teachers naked.
Yeah. I was like, what in the world?
I was like, how, first of all, Zucchini, like, how would he know? Like, I don't know.
And the proportions on the drawing was just like
Yeah, the proportions were way off. They were not realistic.
it was more like anime, probably.
That's true. But I'm just imagining the police officer like, oh, I gotta get rid of this. Like
This is weird. Why is he?
But no.
That was a clever way to storytell, though, because at first you're like, why are they adding narration? And then you realize, oh, he's been telling Raymond this whole time about what it's like living at the orphanage through pictures. So it's not like narration. It kind of tricks you.
Yeah, no, you're right. Then I also thought like they're not really characters. They're just background plot devices. But like the teachers, I thought were kind of cool too. But they're not really I don't know. I don't really count them as characters.
They're just I feel like the portrayal of people who run orphanages in books and like movies and stuff tends to be that they're like really cool, cold-hearted, cruel people who want to make kids' lives miserable and don't really care about the kids in the orphanage, which is like, I'm sure true, maybe even more times than you'd hope. But like, it is nice to see a portrayal of like, oh, there's these people who actually like care about these kids who are like left to the outskirts of society and are not, their parents are in bad situations doing drugs or whatnot, or passed away for whatever various reason, and they're willing to take them in and, you know, care for them. Like the one teacher kisses them all goodnight, which is like a small thing, but it means a lot to kids who aren't really used to having that in their life.
Yeah, no, you're right. I also thought it was cool that they kind of like, that's such a realistic trip. Like, it's a cheap to just go into the cabin and just having a dance party. Like, you can't, it's an orphanage. You can't afford to go to a 5-star hotel, you know?
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, I remember my field trips in my school. We didn't, you know, our school didn't necessarily have a lot of money back then. And we would just go to these random places and just have field trips, like quotation mark field trips, you know? It wasn't like actual, like we had even more fun than we probably would have had at a real place, you know? But it was just kind of like, we make the most out of it. And the teachers made it seem really cool, even though it was like probably a pretty crappy, cheap place to rent. This is such a weird thing to bring up about the movie, but that's what it reminded me of when I was watching
Zach
it.
found how the movie relates to him.
Yeah, no,
it's like, oh man, this orphanage is just kind of like the school I grew up in.
No, yeah, it was cool, and I don't know. I also thought it was like, I was a little concerned. This is just digging into it, but I was concerned that when Ahmed brought up the willy to the teacher, he's like, is your willy okay, or something like that, the teacher didn't address it. I would address it if I were a teacher.
Yeah, you'd be like, no, don't.
Like, let's not talk about that. He just goes, oh yeah.
Like, yeah, it does get into some really weird territory. I feel like you have to be like, that's private, we don't talk about that.
And then they had the guys and girls staying all in the same room.
Yeah, that was like, I was like, what in the.
And they sneak out. Like, they're not the smartest caretakers, I guess.
No, but then they are like 9 or 10, so
that's true.
Like,
that's
it's
true.
a little bit more innocent, I suppose, than your average middle school, high school trip would be in the same situation.
True. But yeah, okay, my next question, it would be based on what you think the film was meant, what emotions you think the film was meant to evoke. Did that happen for you?
I think it did. Like I said, I think the first time it hit me a little bit harder, and I don't exactly know why. Like, I rated this like 5 out of 5.
Whoa!
But I kind of, after this time, I bumped it down to like 4.5, which is still really good. It's still a really good movie. It's just I was like, I mean, this isn't quite like perfect, but it is like one of the best of. Well, I don't even know that I can compare anything to this.
Yeah.
But like, for animated, and it's really in its own category. So there's really, it's hard to rate it maybe because there's nothing to compare it to.
True.
But I feel like I was like tearing up at points, like when they realized that like Raymond's adopting them, and like
well, that's when she's like, I don't know why I'm crying, and he goes, well, sometimes you cry when you're happy. And then you camera goes to Raymond, or fake camera goes to Raymond, and he's like, yeah, and he's crying too, and you're like, oh shoot, like that's kind of that's happy.
It's just it makes you tear up a little bit. And I think I was a little sad at the end of the movie when you see Simon too. So those are kind of the two parts. Maybe there's one other part. I'm trying to think of what it was though, because there's definitely the moments that are like your heart kind of drops when you hear about the story, but the stories that some of the kids went through. But some of them evoke stronger emotions than others. But I think for the most part, it got what it was going for. I kind of described it as melancholy. Like for most of the movie, you feel sort of happy and sort of sad. Like it's kind of even in both categories, because you're seeing these highs and lows, but like for the most part, you get to see the positive parts of the kids' lives and only hear about the negative parts. You don't have to see the negative parts.
True. It's almost like it's portraying like they can't escape what has happened to them. So there's always going to be this background sadness that they have to deal with, that they can't escape. But they're trying to kind of make a way that they can actually live with it. They can have fun with it. And that's what the teachers are trying to help with. It's just kind of like, Camille's a good example because, she came straight from like watching her parents get killed to like, sticking up for the kids that were bullied in the orphanage.
Right.
She still thinks that there's hope out there, which is what Zucchini finds, so hot about her or whatever, which is like kind of weird. Like they met like one day and then kissed the next day, and they're like 10 years old. Yeah, but it was
definitely a very like 5th grade romance.
No, it was perfect. It was great.
Yeah.
It was great. But no, going back to the Simon thing, I think what was sad, the most sad part of the movie for me was actually Simon, like you said. Just the fact that, there are actually kids out there that aren't going to be adopted, that will have to turn 18 and just be on their own, And it's kind of like Simon is like the example of that, and then Camille and Zucchini are the examples of the lucky ones. Most kids aren't like Camille and Zucchini.
Yeah.
So that the reality of it kind of helped me be sad.
Yeah, and then you wonder, I guess, it leads you to wonder, for Simon, is it enough growing up in this orphanage? And then, like, they're all the same age, so are they going to be sent somewhere else at a later point? I don't know. And if they are, like, I don't know how the French, kid system works with kids. Like, in America, we have the foster system, and that's kind of how a lot of kids who...
Actually, I don't know if they were adopted. I think they were fostered into the Raymond.
They were fostered. So they have a foster system in France. So I don't know, like, whether they would eventually be in some sort, but it might not be like a foster family, or more like a foster home, kind of like they were currently at. Like, you wonder whether that's kind of set up like that too.
I don't know,
because it was very small. Like, it's not like there's a ton of kids at this orphanage.
Yeah. How do they, like, the government must pay them like more than, I don't know, if they have three staff members for like 5 kids.
Is that going to be enough to support him to where he doesn't end up like his parents? Because he said his parents used a lot of drugs, and you could see without like a lot of help or oversight, and with risk of being depressed and lonely, that this kid could end up down the same path that his parents were on with drug use.
Mm-hmm.
So that also is kind of depressing if you think about it like that. I don't think like Claude was necessarily like foreshadowing anything.
No,
but it's more you can like extrapolate on. Well, we can see that the consequence for Zucchini and Camila is that they get what appears to be like a loving household to grow up in, and a good environment that they hadn't had, whereas Simon's doesn't get any of that. But he does get better than where he was at.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, because you would still view the school as a loving environment.
Well, then, based off those themes that you pointed out, what do you think was the main theme for that Claude brought out? We Americanized his name, Claude.
Claude. Main theme. I thought that, I don't know if this is like a theme, but I thought that the main theme was just like it just allows exposure to see and sheds new light on kids who are in traumatic situations. Like, that's kind of how I viewed it. Like, it's almost a little bit educational or it could be relatable to some people, like I said, but it also could be like, it makes you think about the fact that there's all these kids in the world that things like this happen to, and a lot of times it's easy to just like forget they exist.
Yeah. I thought it was like a mild propaganda, but like in a good way.
Yeah, you're right.
Because there were a few comments here and there where it was like the system isn't that great, and it probably isn't. I don't know what's happening in France, but
I don't know how any system. I mean, because the problem is the home is the best system to raise kids in.
True.
So as soon as it's broken, there's not going to be any system that's going to be better than that. And like we can try to fix it with adoption and fostering, but there'll never be enough people probably to fulfill the need.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like.
Or I mean, sometimes it's just and particularly America, the obstacles of adopting.
Yeah.
The price, the legal stuff you have to go through, and how long it takes, over a year.
Which you can understand why it's like that, because there's definitely people who abuse the system, and it's very concerning.
Yeah.
You don't want to just let anybody adopt a kid. And it's the same with fostering. I know fostering probably requires a lot of training and, screening and stuff like that. So it's like, you can't say that you don't want it to be like that.
Yeah.
But it does probably keep people who might be able to do it from doing it, who would be capable. So I don't know, but maybe this, at least maybe at the heart of the movie, is this, it shows that kids are worth caring for.
Sure. And that's an obvious point, but it's good to repeat.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we live in a culture that is driven by materialism, and kids are viewed as like vacuums that vacuum up material things that we could have.
Or by Camille's aunt, where she just saw her as money.
Yeah. So literally the kid was the ticket to materialism. And so then you like lose the value of like of loving this child unconditionally, like, and the benefits that could have, that it's way better than anything that you could purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And like emotionally would seem like it would have a much greater benefit on your life, even though it definitely is challenging. Like raising kids who are adopted and fostering is probably even a different challenge from raising your own kids who are like biologically your kids. Mm-hmm. But like either way, it's not like an easy process, because these like kids have this innocence, but they also have this like they're very needy, and there can be lots of different challenges that could come up with raising kids. I talk about this like I know, like I've never raised a kid. No, it's all true though.
That's all true, I think.
I think, yeah. Let's say, like I said, I never raised a kid, so it's all based on like what I've.
But you were a kid who was raised. That's half the story.
Yeah,
but you just don't know the parental side of it. But this is not the parental side of it.
No, this is like a third, like kind of system.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's educational for that, under that mild propaganda category. I think it's supposed to be like, you even have lines where Raymond's like, yeah, sometimes sons leave their parents too. Kids leave their parents. And, that's true too. You got to look at it from all sides of things. And they do in this movie in its short runtime. And the director, I would have to guess, has some kind of experience or has done research in this type of area of adoption, of what it's like in an orphanage, of fostering. He has to have some type of experience in this to know these types of things. Because, I not only learned a little bit more than what I already knew, but I also kind of, I don't know, I kind of resonated with the kids who we sometimes think as the other, who are in the out group, these kids that are adopted. We have a mutual friend who's adopted, Ben, who's pretty close to us, and I don't think of him as the other because I know him so well. But normally when I think of someone who's adopted, I think of, wow, they must have a much different experience. They must have this baggage that they always carry. And the reality is sometimes that's the case, sometimes that's not. We don't actually know. All these kids have different backstories. This is just going towards individualism, like, everybody's going towards. But it really is. For each kid, there is a different story that they have been through. There are different good and bad circumstances. And, their bad circumstances don't necessarily define what they, the emotions that they have to have in the situation, like Camille, for example, or Simon, for example, too, or even Zucchini. All these bad things happen to them, but they still try to find hope. They still try to move forward. They still try to help one another eventually. And then you got Raymond, too. He's like, the example of the good father who wants to come in and kind of help you out, you know?
Yeah. Like, I don't know what went wrong with his son. Like, could it have been his fault partly, and he feels guilty, and it sort of gave him this new desire to like start over? Maybe.
I don't know. He kind of had some attitude. He's like, sometimes kids leave their parents too.
Like it wasn't like he had done. I mean, you can't do everything right, but like he had seemingly done everything right, and then his son kind of just abandoned him. Not like in There Will Be Blood. I abandoned my child. I abandoned my boy. That's good. That's
gonna be you one day, Ben.
Daniel Day-Lewis impression for everyone. Have you seen that movie?
No.
Okay, it's a good movie.
You
Maybe
just
we'll
spoiled
do it
it for me. I'm just joking.
No, that's not spoiling.
I'm just joking. So, there's not really much more to talk about this movie, Ben. What are your closing thoughts on this movie? What would you summarize this movie as?
My Life as a Zucchini seems like it would just be a feel-good claymation Rockland time. And instead, it is melancholy and sad, but also kind of hopeful. And it's kind of refreshing because a lot of times we watch movies to escape, and that's not a bad thing all the time. But this movie, we get to face some of the worst things that people can experience in life head on, and see that there is hope, that kids are resilient, people are resilient. And like Zach said, not all of the bad things that happen to you, which there will be bad things that happen to you, and
there will, and if there's not, Ben and I will make sure of it. Okay.
Yeah. And they don't have to define you, because people can definitely really, it's easier said than done, of course, but like you see people go through cycles where bad things happen in their life when they're younger, and then they end up sort of being the same person who did the bad thing to them. It's like these cycles of abuse, and you see these people who are trying to come into these kids' life and help that from not happening. Like that would have happened to Zucchini had his mom obviously it was still tragic his mom passed away.
But you're saying it's great. He should have killed his mom.
He was still sad too. That's the thing. It was like, you see that he still wanted to be back with his mom. So even though his mom, this is my last point, even though his mom was like objectively like a horrible mother and neglectful, and he still had this like intrinsic love for her, and it sounded like there were even maybe some good memories that he had with her when she wasn't drunk, probably.
Mm-hmm. That's what he says to
So
Raymond.
that's the inherent complexity of life, is that even when people aren't great. I know lots of people who don't have the best relationship with their parents anymore, but I don't think most of them aren't to the point where they would, not desire some reconciliation should there be the opportunity or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not, obviously it's complex. Families are complex, but this shows that there can be some hope.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Zach?
For sure. I don't think I could have said it better, Ben. I think you should watch this movie. It's only an hour. I don't know. Is it on Netflix still?
It's not. I actually, Zach gave me a copy of it and I couldn't find it, but
I did?
I think it's on Blu-ray anyway. Good. And I don't have a Blu-ray player. I need to invest in one.
That's kind of funny because I have my Blu-ray version too, but I couldn't find my Blu-ray player, so I just bought it on Amazon Prime.
That's the same. I did the same thing.
So such a waste of money for me to get that.
I was so excited. I was like, I have this movie, and then it was like I still ended up running it on Amazon. So I guess it is what it is. It was worth it.
For next time, I think you should watch this on Christmas morning with your kids.
As soon as they turn 13, so they can watch PG-13 movies.
Is this PG-13?
Yeah, it is actually.
Oh.
Because I think it's mostly thematic elements and suggestive material.
Oh, that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
I would have said it was like not 13, PG-10.
PG-10.
Come on.
I don't know. I feel like I get why you wouldn't want to show this to a 10-year-old.
No, you're right. So I think it was great. I think you should watch it. Like I said, it's an hour, and when you watch it, just try to notice like what the director's kind of pointing out, because I think these things are actually like the contrast between the lighthearted and the dark stuff was actually a major theme of the movie. So just try to look for that if you watch it, and if not, that's all right too. There are plenty of movies out there that Ben and I will review for you.
Yeah, we're going to be reviewing until, we're 12 now. So if we live to the average male life, which is like
45?
77, I think.
Oh, really? I got to live
I think
that
it's
long?
something like that. It might be a little bit lower. Then we could review, hundreds of movies.
Yeah. Well, here's cheers to that, Ben.
Cheers to that.
Ben has a water bottle, but he used
I used
pretend
an
one.
invisible. I want a body armor. I'm kind of jealous.
Sorry.
I'm
Only
just
for
kidding.
cool kids. I'm just joking. Ben, you're amazing. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And before we get that, there are lots of bad things that can happen in your life. And who can help us out, Ben?
Hedman Anglin Agency.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot help all bad things from happening in your life, but they can, they can prevent some damage after a bad thing happens. Like you get in a car crash, you have insurance, covers it. Yeah, something happens to your home, insurance covers it. And so,
but you have to have the insurance before it happens.
Right. Yeah.
You can't just be like, oh, I had it the whole time. Pretend.
But you didn't actually have it. And this is their desire that you are protected and you feel secure. And when you feel secure, you can sleep better at night. And when you sleep better at night, you can have a better chance of living longer, because sleep is probably an underrated aspect of preventative medicine. A lot of people in America don't sleep, and I'm basing this off of all kinds of studies, and you can just believe me because I said it on a podcast. I'm just kidding, but I actually do think that sleep is kind of important, and a lot of times Americans, being so busy, choose to forget about it. So with that tangent, call 614-486-7300. That's 614-486-7300. And make sure that you tell them that Ben and Zach sent you from the Movie Vault.
Mm-hmm. Not just any Ben and Zach.
Right.
Not just any Ben and Jerry.
And email us. I feel like we haven't plugged our email in a while.
Oh, yeah. I forgot we had an email.
themovievaultpod@gmail.com.
Correct. What's our Instagram?
At movievaultpod.
Okay. Well, there's our plugs. Also our ad. Please go to Hedman Anglin. Please, please, please. They are great. They do great things. Ben and I know they have helped us in so many different ways. They've let us use their studio, stuff like that. Great guys run it. Anyway, okay. So before that, Ben, would you like to close the vault, you particularly?
Yes. Zucchini.